We've been talking a lot tonight about the State of the Union address that President Obama gave for the final time last night. And one of our previous presidents was not exactly a fan of giving State of the Union speeches. In fact, Thomas Jefferson made it known that he did not think that giving an annual State of the Union address was a good idea. And the foremost expert on Jefferson is with us now. He is the author of The Jefferson Lies, Exposing the Myths You've Always Believed About Thomas Jefferson. David Barton, welcome to America Trends.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, David, why is it that Jefferson hated the State of the Union addresses so badly?
He was a very populist. He liked the people. He liked being with the people. And the idea of a State of the Union address is something that was very close to what they did in Great Britain, with what the monarchs did to Parliament. They gave the state address there. And he just thought it was way too close to what we'd left of the European monarchical system, so he didn't care for it at all.
We hear all the time. Jeff, every time I try to explain to people, based on my studies, frankly, of your sites and the work that you've done and personal conversations I've had with you and speeches of yours I've heard, I guess I could go on. I'm kind of a groupie. The thing that the statists always come back to me with is saying that Jefferson was a deist. So I'm wondering if you clear that up in your book, and what are some of the other big lies that you want to clear up?
Yeah, we do clear that up in the book. Jefferson definitely was not a deist, not even close to it. Now, part of the problem we have today is that our definition of deist is nowhere close to what it was in that day. Our definition of deist today is the synonyms in the dictionaries say akin to atheist agnostic. Nowhere close to that. Jefferson said very clearly late in life, an atheist I never can be. A deist in the sense of believing in a clockmaker God that wound up the universe and then disappeared. Don't worry about praying. It's not going to matter. Jefferson didn't believe that either, not by a long shot. He held some beliefs from a Christian standpoint that would be considered unorthodox late in life, but there never was a time when he was not pro-Jesus, pro-Christian, or pro-religion.
So what were some of those more unconventional for his time, as you're saying? Some of those more unconventional pieces of information. Were they doctrinal?
They were doctrinal. They were purely doctrinal. They had nothing to do with what happened in public practice. He, for example, late in life made it very clear he's not sure that Jesus was divine. That's a doctrinal teaching. He's not sure that all the scriptures were inspired. He believed that many were, but not necessarily all. So he got into some doctrinal things late in life that a lot of folks would say, hey, that's not very orthodox. But throughout his life, what he never got into was secularism. What he did, it was interesting that through 1876, the largest church in the United States was the one that met inside the U.S. Capitol, something that Jefferson helped start way back. He attended that church for 8 years as president. He attended it before that as vice president. He helped get it started as Secretary of State under George Washington. So throughout his public career, he was very public about helping religion. As president, he actually took federal funds and helped fund missionaries to Indian groups. He helped fund Christian schools. He helped do a lot of things, include start churches in the United States, seat of government in Washington, D.C., not only in the Capitol, but in the Treasury Building and the War Department. So nothing about Jefferson says secularist in any way, shape, fashion, or form, although some of the doctrines he held from a Christian standpoint would be fairly heterodox.
And so this is going to date me, but I believe it was your book that I read the very first time called, I think it was The Myth of Separation. Isn't that your book?
That's it. That's the book. Yes, ma'am.
And that was the very first book I read that prompted a conversation with my statist agnostic father, who's also an activist on the other side of politics from me, that gave me a lot of ammunition, frankly. But if you can encapsulate for us why the whole idea of the separation of church and state is a lie.
Yeah, the separation of church and state is a really good thing if you define it right. And the way Jefferson defined it is exactly right. Where you have a state-established church, you do not have freedom of conscience, you do not have religious toleration, and you do have religious coercion. So we came out of a system with Great Britain where they had a state-established church, Anglican or Catholic, whatever it was, and if you were on the outside of that looking in, you got serious problems. You're facing jail time, sometimes penalties. America's populated with people who had been nailed, and I mean seriously physically nailed or fined because they weren't part of the state-established church. Jefferson lived in a state of Virginia where they had the Anglican state-established church, and he watched as Baptists, as Presbyterians, as Methodists, as Quakers, as others were killed, were put in jail, were fined, were beaten, etc., because they were from the wrong church. So when he called for separation of church and state, it was the denominational separation. He wanted what we had had previous to that, and that is your free exercise of religion. You choose your own denomination, if at all, but the government can't tell you what denomination to be part of. So when he wrote his original separation letter on January the 1st, 1802, it was to a Baptist group in Connecticut that was afraid that the Congregationalists were going to set up a state-established denomination. And Jefferson assured them the First Amendment would not allow a federally established denomination, therefore they'd have religious freedom. That's not what it is today.
So for those who say, well, then should we not have 10 Commandments or other religious symbols, nativities on state property, you say what?
I say, why is religious speech not free speech? We allow all sorts of free speech on state property. Why is it no longer free speech if it's religious speech? And by the way, if it does not establish a federal denomination, the First Amendment doesn't apply to it anyway under original intent. So as you look back at particularly Jefferson, I mean, again, he's not only doing church in the Capitol, he's doing many other things with federal dollars. And because it didn't establish a particular denomination, it was fine under the First Amendment. So I look at 10 Commandments, I look at saying under God in the pledge, etc. I said, what denomination does that establish? It doesn't, therefore it's fine. That's original intent.
So for those who would accuse folks like you and I, who believe that our faith is a really important part of the fiber of our nation, and that we were, in fact, founded on Judeo-Christian principles, as you mentioned, Jefferson's establishment of having church services in the Capitol, but they want to call us theocratic, and I just want to get your response to that.
Well, number one, that means they don't know what the word theocratic means, because as long as you have free elections, you cannot be theocratic. Theocratic is run by an elitist that hears from God and acts on behalf of the people. You and I are both constitutionalists. We're big into people choosing their own leaders. If they choose leaders of faith and follow the Constitution, there's no chance of being theocrats. So what they do is they use this pejoratives, this ad hominem type attacks, to accuse us of theocracy. I, for one, never am, never will be, because I'll always be for the people choosing their leaders as assigned by the Constitution, which is inherently opposed to theocracy.
But the religion of Islam, Sharia law certainly states that it would like to overthrow our Constitution in favor of their religion. Is that theocracy?
Well, if you look at Iran, it certainly is. And if you look at where Muslim Brotherhood has had great influence, it certainly is. And that has been a problem. By the way, it was Jefferson who fought the first war on terror. America is involved in 32 years of fighting terrorism. Jefferson never believed it was a religion of peace. He did not believe that we should fight terrorism by drawing back from it, but rather confronting it. Exactly opposite of what we do today. But there's no question that Islam is a theocracy.
All right, David Barton, thank you so much. You can find him at wallbuilders.com. We appreciate you being with us. God bless you and God bless your work. Grab his book. It is available everywhere. The Jefferson Lies, Exposing the Myths You Always Believed About Thomas Jefferson.